Where legends breathe again. EldMyth. High in the icy mountains, a fierce huntress waits. Her arrows fly with deadly precision, her gaze as cold as the winter winds. Who is Skadi, the Norse goddess of the hunt and winter? The wind howls across a vast, frozen expanse, a sound so ancient and pure it seems to scrape the very sky. It is a voice that carries the memory of glaciers, the sigh of falling snow, and the silent, immense weight of the mountains themselves. We stand at the edge of the world, a realm of stark beauty and unforgiving cold, where the sun is a distant, weak coin in a pale sky, and the night is a long, star-strewn dominion. It is here, in this primordial landscape of rock and ice, that one of the most formidable and enigmatic figures of Norse mythology carved her legend. Her name is Skadi, the goddess of the hunt, of winter, of the untamed mountains. She is a paradox, a giantess who dwells among the gods, a figure of vengeance who sought a joyful marriage, a huntress whose domain is both life and death in the frozen wilds. Her story is not one of gentle spring breezes or fertile fields, but of the invigorating, deadly chill that forges resilience in the soul. To understand Skadi is to understand the necessity of winter, the clarity of cold, and the indomitable strength required to face a world of ice and stone. Her tale begins not in the golden halls of Asgard, but in the craggy peaks of Jotunheim, a place where the very air can freeze a mortal solid in moments, and where the children of the frost learn to be as hard and enduring as the land that bore them. Skadi's origins are rooted in the raw, chaotic power of the Jotnar, the giants who represent the fundamental, often destructive, forces of the cosmos. Her father was Thiazi, a mighty storm giant who could take the form of a great eagle, whose wings beat the winds into a frenzy. He was a being of immense power and ambition, and it is through his death that Skadi is thrust into the heart of Asgardian politics. The myths tell of Thiazi's cunning theft of the goddess Idun and her golden apples, the source of the Aesir gods' youth and vitality. Without Idun, the gods began to age, their strength waning, their immortality threatened. The rescue mission, led by the cunning Loki, resulted in Thiazi's death at the hands of the gods, who built a great fire that scorched the eagle's wings as he pursued Loki back to Asgard. Skadi, dwelling in her father's hall, Thrymheim, felt his death as a seismic shock through the very mountain she called home. Her grief was not a quiet, weeping sorrow, but a cold, focused fury. Donning her finest armor of polished bone and ring mail, strapping her massive bow of yew wood and her skis of ancient, polished ash to her back, she descended from her mountain fastness. Her journey to Asgard was not a plea for mercy, but a declaration of war. She moved across the snows with a predator's grace, a single, avenging figure against the white vastness, her purpose as sharp and unyielding as an icicle. The gods, peering from the walls of Asgard, did not see a supplicant. They saw a force of nature, winter itself given form and intent, arriving at their golden gates to demand a blood price for her father's slaying. The Aesir gods, though mighty, were also bound by their own laws of honor and recompense. They could not simply slay the daughter of the giant they had killed. To do so would invite endless war with the Jotnar. Instead, they offered her weregild, a payment for her loss. But Skadi's demands were as unique as her character. She did not first ask for gold or treasure, the common currency of compensation. Her heart, hardened by the cold and her loss, yearned for something she believed could never be hers: laughter. She demanded that the gods make her laugh, a seemingly simple yet profound challenge for a heart encased in ice. The task fell to Loki, the trickster, the architect of her father's demise. What followed was a scene of pure, chaotic farce. Loki tied one end of a rope to the beard of a nanny goat and the other to his own genitals, and the resulting tug-of-war, with its ridiculous squeals, tumbles, and pained yelps, was so absurd that even Skadi's stern facade cracked. A laugh, sharp and unexpected, escaped her lips, a sound like cracking ice on a spring lake. It was a moment of psychological mastery by the gods, disarming her rage not with force but with foolishness, acknowledging her grief while reminding her of life's inherent, ridiculous joy. With the tension broken, Skadi then made her second, more serious demand, a husband from among the gods. She stipulated, however, that she must choose him solely by looking at his feet, believing that the most noble and handsome of the Aesir would have the finest feet. The line of eligible gods stood before her, their faces hidden by a screen or a curtain, leaving only their feet visible. Skadi's eyes, keen as a hawk's, scanned the line. She sought the most beautiful feet, assuming they would belong to Balder, the most beautiful of all the gods, whose skin shone with a radiant light. She pointed to a pair of feet that were indeed flawless, clean, and perfectly formed. A confident smile must have touched her lips as she made her choice. But when the screen was lifted, her heart surely sank. The owner of the beautiful feet was not Balder, but the sea god Njord. He was a god of wealth and seafaring, lord of the winds and the fertile shore, a being whose very essence was the antithesis of her own. Where she was of the high, cold, silent mountains, he was of the shifting, noisy, teeming sea. It was a marriage of fundamental opposites, a union destined for discord. Yet a pact was a pact, sworn before the assembled Aesir. Skadi, the winter huntress, became the wife of Njord, the summer sailor. They left Asgard together, a pair bound by law but divided by nature, to begin a life that would test the very concept of compromise, setting the stage for one of mythology's most poignant tales of incompatible homesickness. The first chapter of their married life was spent in Njord's hall by the sea, Notun, the ship enclosure. The air was thick with the salt of the ocean, the constant cries of gulls, and the rhythmic, pounding waves that Skadi found utterly maddening. To a spirit accustomed to the profound silence of the high peaks, broken only by the wind and the crack of a distant avalanche, the sea was a relentless, chaotic noise. She described the screeching of the birds as a sound that woke her from sleep, a jarring intrusion into her dreams. The sound of the waves was not a soothing lullaby but a monotonous, pounding headache. She missed the clean, sharp scent of pine and cold stone, replaced here by the pungent smell of seaweed, fish, and damp timber. Every sense was assaulted. She felt trapped, not by walls but by the horizon which offered no solidity, no challenge, no heights to conquer. Her soul, shaped by verticality and solitude, languished in this flat, bustling, and damp world. She longed for the bite of frost on her cheeks, the crunch of snow under her skis, the vast, star-dusted canopy of a mountain night. Her husband's world, though prosperous and beautiful in its own right, was a gilded cage for the wild huntress, and her heart ached for the jagged outlines of her homeland with a physical pain. Hoping to find harmony, the couple agreed to leave the shore and travel to Skadi's home, her father's great hall of Thrymheim, high in the mountains of Jotunheim. For Skadi, it was a homecoming. She breathed deeply of the thin, cold air, feeling her spirit expand with every step on familiar rocky paths. The silence was a balm, the sweeping vistas a comfort. She could don her skis and travel for miles, the only sound the hiss of snow beneath her and the call of a lone eagle. But for Njord, this environment was as hostile as the sea had been for her. The cold was a penetrating, brutal force that his sea-warmed blood could not abide. The howling of the wolves at night was not a wild song but a terrifying threat. The wind, which Skadi heard as a symphony, was to him a constant, shrieking torment that prevented sleep. He complained bitterly of the frozen, barren landscape, missing the gentle lapping of waves on the shore, the warm breezes, and the fertile, life-giving nature of his own domain. After 9 nights, a symbolic period in Norse mythology, the experiment was over. Their love, if it had ever truly blossomed, could not survive in the other's element. They agreed to separate, an amicable but sorrowful acknowledgement that some divides are too fundamental to cross. Skadi returned to her mountains, and Njord to his sea. Yet Skadi's story does not end with a retreat into isolation. Her separation from Njord was not a defeat, but a reclaiming of her own identity. She became a fully integrated, though independent, member of the Aesir. The gods, perhaps in a final gesture of reconciliation and respect, performed a deed of profound symbolic meaning. They took a venomous serpent, the embodiment of poison and treachery, and hung it above the bound Loki as punishment for his role in Baldur's death. But they needed a vessel to catch the dripping venom. It was Skadi who provided the bowl, a simple, functional object that became an instrument of cosmic torture and, paradoxically, a small mercy. She placed it above Loki's head, ensuring the poison would not immediately touch him, but she also ensured it was not large enough to prevent the agonizing drops from eventually falling when it overflowed, forcing Loki's wife, Sigyn, to constantly empty it. This act shows Skadi's complex morality. She participates in the punishment, aligning with the gods' justice, yet her involvement is practical and unflinching, a reflection of her harsh, realistic worldview. She is not needlessly cruel, but she believes in consequences. She had transitioned from an outsider seeking vengeance to an insider administering a form of cold, mountain-style justice. Back in her element, Skadi truly flourished. Thrymheim was not a place of mourning, but a seat of power. She became the undisputed mistress of the winter hunt, a spectral figure gliding on her skis across the snowfields, her bow an extension of her will. She was more than a predator. She was a vital part of the mountain's ecosystem, a force of natural selection. Hunters and warriors would pray to her for skill and luck, hoping to emulate her unerring aim and her intimate knowledge of the wild. She represented the necessary, respectful relationship between the hunter and the hunted. To succeed in her domain was to be granted life-sustaining resources. To fail was to face a swift, cold end. She was often depicted with a wolf, a creature that shares her attributes of pack loyalty and ferocious independence, and whose howl is the true voice of the northern wilderness. Her connection to the landscape was so profound that the very geography of Scandinavia was said to be touched by her. The name Scandinavia itself is thought by many scholars to be derived from Skandinavia, meaning the region or island of Skadi. Thus, she is not just in the land. She is the land, her spirit imbued in every fjord and every forested slope. The legacy of Skadi extends far beyond the pages of the prose Edda. She is a powerful archetype that has resonated through centuries. In modern times, she is seen as a symbol of feminine strength, independence, and a deep, spiritual connection to the natural world. She represents the person who thrives in solitude, who finds their strength not in society but in the challenges of the wild. She is the embodiment of resilience, the spirit that endures the long, dark winter and emerges not weakened, but sharpened and clear. In literature and art, she is often reimagined as the Ice Queen, the Winter Warrior, a character whose initial coldness masks a deep, complex inner world and a fierce moral code. She appears in contemporary fantasy novels, video games, and comics, often as a mentor figure or a formidable ally whose allegiance must be earned through respect and courage. Her influence is felt in the very way we romanticize and respect winter sports and mountaineering. The modern hunter scaling a cliff face or the skier descending a treacherous run is, in a way, paying homage to Skadi's domain, testing themselves against the elements she commands. So, as the long northern night gives way to the dawn, and the first rays of the sun glint off a million ice crystals, remember the goddess who chose the path of solitude and strength. Skadi's story is a testament to the power of knowing oneself, even when that knowledge leads away from comfort and companionship. It is a celebration of the wild places, the untamed spirit, and the harsh, beautiful clarity of winter. She teaches us that some hearts are forged in cold, and their love is not expressed in warm embraces, but in steadfast endurance, unwavering purpose, and the silent, profound understanding of a landscape that others fear. She is the crunch of snow underfoot, the sharp sting of wind, the distant howl that reminds us of the wildness that still exists, both in the world and within ourselves. Look to the mountains, listen to the wind in the pines, and you may just hear the echo of her skis, a whisper from a time when gods and giants walked the earth, and winter had a name, a bow, and a will of iron. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe, and continue the journey through myths.